and the Houston Astros have thrown the second no-hitter in the history of the World Series. This is remarkable, a historic night here in Philadelphia where we are now, and Alex and I are going to break it all down on this episode of Flippin Bats, presented by Perry Ellis Fragrances. What a night here in Philly.
I mean, we saw history last night with the home runs. I don't think anybody expected us to see this kind of history tonight with the Astros no-hitting the Phillies, especially with how hot their bats have been this entire series. This was also the quietest I've ever seen this stadium, but you got to hand it to the Houston Astros. We'll get into the history of the no-hitters in the World Series, but we got to dive right into the guy who started it all, Javier. An unbelievable performance, also making history, but this is your fourth guy coming out and pitching like an ace.
Well, Cristian Javier has been dominant since the All-Star break, and he's not a popular name, I wouldn't say, amongst the baseball fan masses because of what you said, Alex. He's the number 4 starter.
Yeah.
In fact, he wasn't even a starter for a lot of the season this year. He was a pick guy coming in long relief because that's how deep this Astros pitching staff from top to bottom truly is. But you get your number 4 starter in the World Series throwing a no-hitter, 6 innings for him, which is a historic start because nobody in the World Series has gone even 5 innings. Nobody's gone 5 innings with 9 strikeouts and 0 hits. He did it with 6 innings, so he topped that. Just a dominant start from a guy that I felt had been underappreciated just because not many people talk about him. But he throws invisiballs, which I talked to John Smoltz. We'll hear from him in a little while. But he's so dominant because of how nasty he is, and his fastball is so hard to pick up. His slider was disgusting. We saw it here tonight. And as you mentioned, this Philly lineup that was hot ended up not getting a single hit. This is one of the greatest starts in World Series history for Cristian Javier.
I would say it is the greatest because he is the first pitcher in World Series history with 9 strikeouts, no hits in 5 innings, and he ended up going 6 innings. That's crazy to wrap your head around.
It really is. And I was sitting there in the stands just thinking, is this really happening? And then it does happen, and we're walking out on the field as we usually do, and the crowd is so quiet. You almost there was just a no-hitter thrown in the World Series. And I caught up with Ryan Presley as well. We'll talk to him later, but he was on cloud 9. I mean, this was a historic night, as we know. But Cristian Javier, who has continued to be underappreciated, and he did it in the ALCS. He did it against the New York Yankees in New York.
He did.
I mean, this is getting to the point where Cristian Javier is the guy you want on the mound if you're the Houston Astros. How can you say no to that? He did it in New York. He did it here in Philly against a lineup that was absolutely on fire, and he got this World Series back under control for the Houston Astros.
Yeah, because of this outing, we are now going back to Houston.
Yep.
And then you got to be feeling pretty good about that. Now, you mentioned you talked to Smoltz. What did he have to say about Javier?
Yeah, so talked to John Smoltz before the game, as I'm doing every single day, and I brought up Cristian Javier and what we could expect from him, and I asked John Smoltz, what is it? This is an invisiball, if you will, which I've seen many of them, but I figured John Smoltz could explain a little bit better what it is that makes Javier so dominant, because he's throwing 92, 93, topping out at 95, but it's done a little differently. And I caught up with John Smoltz, and we talked all about that. On the other side of things, Cristian Javier, who I think might be one of the more underrated pitchers in baseball. Since the beginning of September, his numbers are otherworldly. He's been dominant. One word when people, I guess it might be 2 words, but when you mention Cristian Javier, people say he throws like an invisible fastball.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Yeah, it's a gift. It really is. We hear that a lot, and it's the way that the ball comes out of his hand. They don't see it. You know, I talk about late life and then that invisible. Well, late life is when I'm playing catch with somebody and I go to catch it and the ball actually gets to me before I catch it. That's late life. Yeah. The ball has hop. The invisible has to do with spin, release point. You just don't pick it up. It's in the zone. You think you're going to hit it, and they don't. That's a gift. And you don't try to figure those gifts out. You just pitch with that. But he is very good with 2 pitches, and I think the confidence that he has, that the Astros have, look, they know. We talked about it before. Deeper series, favors Houston. The difference is they got to get to a deeper series now, having been down 2-1.
How cool is it that I brought it up to Smoltz about him throwing an invisible fastball, and he just says it's a gift, and you don't try and figure it out, you just pitch with it. And then a couple of hours later, he pitched with it in the World Series and was a part of the second no-hitter in World Series history. Really cool, I thought.
He also talked about his confidence, and you got to imagine that after a performance like this, Javier is on cloud 9 with confidence through the roof, which is exactly what you need for a pitcher. Now, you mentioned this is the second no-hitter in World Series history. The last one, 1956 by Don Larson.
Oh.
That's a really long time ago.
That's a long time ago.
A long time ago.
I only barely remember that one. I tweeted this right after Javier was done, so after the 6th inning. What an outing. Cristian Javier just announced his dominance to the world. He's done after 6 of the most dominant innings you'll see. And, man, does that hold true? And now even more so because it's officially part of history.
It's so crazy. I mean, there have only been 19 combined no-hitters in MLB history. There's a lot of – between these two teams, there's a lot of stats around no-hitters because this is the second time this season the Phillies have been no-hit. But the Astros also are the team – with the most no-hitters.
Yeah, the Astros have now thrown 4 combined no-hitters. One was earlier this year in Yankee Stadium, which Cristian Javier was also the starter for that game.
That's
so it's
crazy.
Getting in historic territory. You mentioned the Phillies, and obviously they're the team that got no-hit tonight.
Yeah.
No team in MLB history has been no-hit more than the Philadelphia Phillies. So history has been made here tonight. We talked a lot about on the Astros side.
Yeah.
We'll keep it to a minimal on the Phillies side, but they've been no-hit more than any other team. And it's a little surprising this year that it's happened twice when you look at how good this lineup is. I mean, we've been watching it now since the start of the NLCS. This is a very good lineup. So this just speaks volumes to the depth of the Houston Astros, which was a huge key for me coming into these playoffs, was the depth that they have over the Phillies, specifically in the rotation, being able to not have to bump up a guy like Justin and be able to use Cristian Javier in that 4 spot in the rotation so you're not having to shuffle all around, which turned out to be huge because we saw Nola tonight, and we'll talk about him in a little while. He was great, and then it almost looked like he ran out of gas. Maybe another day, who knows. But the depth of the rotation and the bullpen showed itself tonight, and man, it was really cool to just be here and be a part of it.
And not only did you talk about the strength of the Astros starting rotation, but we've talked a lot about the strength of their bullpen, and it was a 4-man job tonight to get this combined no-hitter, which, again, it's hard to do. There's only been 19 in the history of the game, and you got to give it up to the Astros bullpen tonight.
Yeah, and that's one thing. You hear combined no-hitter. There have obviously been way less in Major League history than individual no-hitters, but I don't want this to take away. I don't want a combined no-hitter to take away anything. It is certainly different.
Yes.
Right? And if you're the starting pitcher, obviously a 9-inning no-hitter means a little different.
Yeah.
But a combined no-hitter is important and very impressive in its own right because you have to have everybody on their A game at the same time. It's not just one guy that's locked in, and next thing you know, he's through 9 no-hit innings and he's thrown a no-hitter. No, you've got to have every single guy that comes in tonight, 4 of them on their A game. And we saw that tonight from Cristian Javier to Abreu to Montero to Ryan Presley, who came in and finished it all off. And